Meditation is the one self-improvement thing nobody argues with. Doctors suggest it, apps gamify it, your most together friend swears by it, and it comes wrapped in a promise you almost never hear questioned. Pure upside, no downside, good for absolutely everyone. For most people, in small doses, that mostly holds. But there's a real minority for whom sitting down to watch their own mind goes somewhere dark. And for years, the research that could have warned them simply wasn't being done. None of this is an argument against meditating. It's the warning label the bottle never carried. For decades, studies on meditation were mostly hunting for benefits, lower stress, better focus, and a huge number of them never bothered to track whether anyone got worse. When a researcher named Miguel Farias went back through the literature, he found that most trials didn't systematically record harm at all. And an absence of recorded harm gets read by everyone downstream as proof of safety. It isn't. It just means nobody was looking. A drug tested that way would never reach a shelf. Meditation reached 100 million phones. A few researchers finally looked properly. In one survey of over 1,200 regular meditators, about 1 in 4 reported an experience they found particularly unpleasant and tied directly to their practice. A quarter of committed meditators. And this is where that number usually gets twisted, because most of those experiences were passing. Unpleasant isn't the same as damaged. One rough sit is not a diagnosis. When researchers went looking specifically for lasting damage, the far more serious thing, the number dropped through the floor. In a sample built to reflect the general population, only about 1 in 100 meditators reported harm that stuck around longer than a month. So hold the two numbers side by side. A rough patch on the mat is common, and it almost always passes. Harm that lasts is genuinely rare. You have to hold both without letting either one erase the other. What are these experiences, though? A team at Brown University sat down with dozens of meditators who'd run into trouble and mapped it out properly. And it's broader than most people imagine. They found more than 50 distinct kinds of difficulty across 7 whole categories of human experience. Waves of fear that arrive for no reason. Involuntary movements. A flood of old memories surfacing unasked. Perception going strange, so that sounds turn too loud and light too sharp. And the one that unsettles people most, the sense of self starting to feel thin or unreal, which we'll come back to. Their study was built to chart the territory, not to count heads. So it can't tell you how common any single one of these is. The last one deserves a minute, because people have no language for it. Some meditators, especially those going deep, start to feel detached from themselves. Their own hands look like they belong to someone else. The world goes flat, like it's seen through glass. Clinicians call it depersonalization. The strange part is that this exact experience, the self going still and distant, is sold in some traditions as a spiritual breakthrough, the ego dissolving. For a person with the right guide and the right framing, it can land that way. For someone alone with a meditation app and no context, the same sensation can feel like they're losing their mind. Same event, the support around it decides which one it becomes. This doesn't hit at random, and the pattern is worth knowing before you go deeper. The rougher experiences cluster around a few things. Intensity above all, the 10-day silent retreats and the long solo sits, not the 10 minutes before work. a mind that already runs hot with rumination, a history of trauma because stillness can lift the lid on things that were being held down by constant motion. And the deconstructive techniques, the ones that ask you to dissolve the boundaries of the self, which are a very different animal from watching your breath. Deeper isn't automatically better on its own. Past a point, deeper is just deeper, and it needs someone who knows the water. A subtler failure hides in plain sight, one that doesn't look like harm at all from outside. A psychotherapist named John Wellwood gave it a name in the 80s: spiritual bypassing. Using the practice to step around your actual problems instead of through them. The person who meditates every day and stays untroubled precisely because they're using the stillness to avoid the hard conversation, the grief, the thing they need to feel. It's not a lab finding, it's a clinical observation, so hold it loosely. But most people who've spent time in these circles recognize it instantly. Peace can be real growth. It can also be a very sophisticated place to hide. None of this is an attack, and the good evidence is real. Meditation is a genuinely powerful tool. For people with recurring depression, a structured mindfulness program cuts the odds of relapse by roughly a third, which is on par with staying on medication. It reliably takes the edge off anxiety for a lot of people. This whole video is the opposite of don't meditate. The thing powerful enough to move depression that much is, by definition, powerful enough to have edges. The strength and the risk are the same fact seen from two sides. It usually starts with the best intentions. Someone anxious, told by everyone that meditation is the answer, signs up for a 10-day silent retreat to really fix themselves. Hours of sitting a day, no talking, no distraction, no one checking in. Around day 4, the silence stops being restful and old things start coming up, fast. And there's no off switch and no one to tell. They spend the last days white-knuckling it and come home shaken, sure they're the one broken person who couldn't handle the thing that heals everyone else. Really, they were just a beginner dropped into the deep end, with no one watching the water. So the real problem was never meditation. It was the label, the idea that a serious tool for reshaping your own mind is a gentle default with no way to go wrong. Treat it like what it is: powerful, worth doing, and worth doing with some care. Start small before you go deep. Match the technique to where you actually are, not to whatever retreat influencer is selling. And if things get strange, that's information, not failure, and a sign to find a real guide. That's the reason Kairo lays out more than one way to sit, with the context around each, instead of dropping you into a single 10-minute timer and calling it done. So by all means, sit down with your own mind. Just go in knowing it has a deep end, and learn where it is before you swim out.